Well, welcome everybody to our workshop, Smart Meter Rollup, Learnings from Spain, Bulgaria and the UK. I'm sure we'll have a fascinating session today. We'll be exploring different approaches, use cases and barriers within Europe's rollout out of smart meter systems. Do let me know if there are any issues with the IT system today or if there are any objections to us recording this session. If anyone would like their comments or feedback anonymized, just let us know now. If not, then they might be fed forward into some of the policy recommendations and the follow-up sessions that we use. If you do want your comments redacted or anonymized at a later date, please just give us an email. There are contact forms at the end of this, and you can pop a message in the chat as well. Just a quick reminder, if you do write in the hop in chat, make sure that you use the session tab, not the events or booth tab, because that will be visible to everyone across Sustainable Places. So, without further ado, what is the session about today? We'll be focusing on developing and disseminating new learnings about the various approaches to rolling out smart meters across the EU. And you might be able to tell that we'll be taking Spain, Bulgaria, and the UK as our initial case studies and discussing some of the pros and some of the cons of these national smart meter ecosystems and the implementation of their rollout. We were running just 5 minutes behind time, so the intros may be a little bit quicker, but let's talk a little bit about our presenters today, and hopefully we'll see the slides moving around. Perfect. So now we can meet some of the experts that we have on the panel today from Spain, Bulgaria, and the UK, and they'll tell us a little bit about themselves and their interest in smart meter systems. So my name is Connor Enright. I'm from EP Group, more specifically EP Consulting. We're a net zero finance and due diligence specialists, but we also work on measurement and verification and a range of other issues across the UK. And we're collaborating today as part of the Enright project, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a second. But without further ado, let's hear a bit more about Hilary Wood from Eaves.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. So the company I work for, Eaves, provides measurement and verification services across the non-domestic energy efficiency sector in the UK. We're very much fans of good data and doing useful things with it. So I'm going to talk a bit about the role that it's playing in the UK energy performance contracting industry in sort of facilitating projects and allowing a greater sort of wider range of uptake.
Fantastic. A fascinating topic. I look forward to it. We've also got Stanislav Andreev today from NFX. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Stanislav?
Yep. Hello. In NFX, I'm mostly responsible for the energy auditing, and for me, data from smart metering is crucial if we want to do a quality energy audits and energy performance certificates for buildings. Unfortunately, this is something that is still missing in Bulgaria. So I'm interested in the topic and identifying barriers and try to do something in order to, let's say, influence the penetration of smart metering in Bulgaria.
Fantastic. A topic that I'm sure a lot of nations and consultants have got on their mind at this point. Finally, we'll hear a little bit from our final speaker, Oriol Escarcel. Tell us a bit about yourself, Oriol.
Hi, I'm Oriol Escarcel. I'm from ICANN. I'm here because I'm part of the Catalan Institute for Energy, which is involved in carrying out the Catalan energy policy, both in the renewable energies and the energy efficiency. Today, I'm here to talk about how we are using smart meter data in a project such as Enright, trying to reduce the energy consumption and detect the wrong use of energy in buildings towards energy efficiency, mainly.
Fantastic. Thank you, Oriol. So apart from Hilary from Eaves, who will be giving us a more of a private sector use case focused perspective, we're all here from the Enright project. So I thought I'd tell you a bit now to highlight what Enright does, which is a research Horizon 2020 research project. It's funded by the European Commission, and we're attempting to create a one-stop platform for standardized building performance data for Europe's public and its private building stock. So the project shares a lot of the objectives of this session: to provide cross-border insight, to to policymakers who are often operating in national silos, and we will have the final desired outcome of improving capture and utilization of building performance data across Europe. So smart meter systems and the automated use of smart meter data are highly relevant for feeding into building performance databases such as these, and the use cases that those building performance databases have for the user in the industry in the end. Enright is also attempting to address the lack of statistical data that points to and quantifies energy and cost savings, and we're doing that through the creation of this interoperable ecosystem of data, both data and tools that can support building refurbishment and decision making. You can see here a couple of facts about the project. We've got pilots in both Spain and Bulgaria, so one of the reasons why we chose those as case studies, as well as their fascinating contexts. And it's running for 36 months. However, we're some months in now, so it'll be ending in October of 2023. We've got a huge number of energy efficiency measures that will be within the system, and a lot of work going on to make sure that we're delivering effective tools and systems to make the most of that data. So, and if you do want to learn more about Enright or be a part of any of the forum and the public engagement, do not hesitate to pop in the chat or fill out the form at the end, and we'll discuss that a little bit more later. So the aim of this Enright platform is to continuously develop and represent the best practice in data governance, not just around interoperability, but looking at the most contemporary databases and tools and taking that best practice. Along with the smart meter data systems promoted here, we're looking to lead to an unambiguous data exchange-based services ecosystem. We're looking to lower transaction costs and enable different services to step in and make the most of the data that's currently out there but not available. And this should unlock further investment in comfortable, healthy buildings and climate change mitigation. As a way of launching the best practice discussion and building on some of our own experience from EP Consulting, we've summarised some of the context and issues that we face in the UK today, and we'll talk about that just now. So the UK, in some ways, has done very well around smart metering. Currently, we have around 40% of our homes, UK homes, with smart meter data, and many of our businesses have automatic meter reading systems. Most of the smart meters, the domestic smart meters, feed into a system called the Data and Communications Company. It was established as a secure and resilient monitoring system for these smart meters and the data that they provide. All of that metered energy data has strict requirements under the Smart Energy Code, and the DCC, the Data and Communications Company, must comply with this also. However, this compliance stretches further, so any services that utilize that data, such as metered savings, heat as a service models, and so on, will require a thorough legal review to guarantee that they're compliant with both the Smart Energy Code and another piece of legislation called the Data Access and Privacy Framework. This ensures that data can be collected from households while still protecting personal data, which is something that we all, of course, support. But we also know that the data that these systems provide is essential for delivering the services that we talked about a moment ago, but also for doing important baselining and offering nearly live, highly granular data at a household level for services such as grid control. However, the numbers of routes to access this UK smart meter data, there are a few of them, but most of them are costly or only practical at a very small scale due to the requirements for customer permissions. I'll flick through to the next slide now. So any energy professionals that plan to use a smart metering data system still require a clear process for accessing smart meter data that can be deployed every time. You can see in this blue box here what the current process looks like and just how long and costly in terms of time and expenditure it can be. In an ideal scenario, we'd also like to take other data about the home as well. And so often in order to achieve this, but also mainly to circumvent some of the prohibitive issues around accessing legislated smart meter data. Many services end up using an in-home customer access device, which effectively reads and communicates the data separately from the smart meter and the smart metering system, bypassing these requirements. However, this has a lot of practicality and cost implications, particularly for smaller scale projects where the additional cost of equipment impacts the project savings, but also for large scale ongoing data collection activities, such as those that we wish to present in Enright. So currently it's very much a consumer by consumer approach, where these consumer access devices are deployed for smaller scale interventions, and for anything larger than a consultant or a member of staff has to dedicate themselves to running through these 5 or 6 steps on the right here. And note that this is for every single meter in a lot of cases, not just for each client individually. So there are a lot of things that could be improved about the UK system, and I'm really interested to hear from other speakers about what their experience has been in different national contexts and how we can learn from each other to create a more holistic, joined up approach to smart meter data and data governance. If you have any questions about the UK context, or you'd like to discuss it further, please feel free to use the session chat at any point. We'd love to hear from you. Fantastic. But it's not all about the UK, both its failures and its barriers. We want to learn what can be unlocked through accessible, secure smart meter data and how this is being delivered in other EU nations. And so we'll have a couple of 5 to 10 minute presentations from the panel here. And I'm really looking forward to the first one. We're going to start with Hilary on the topic of the value of good data with some lessons from the UK's measurement and verification industry. Are you coming through okay, Hilary?
Yep. Yeah, if you good to find my first slide.
Wonderful. There's plenty of time. In fact, I'll just take a pause for a moment there so that I can get that slide up for you. Okay. So you know that it's live when there's technical issues, so that's my excuse. Okay, and now I have to excuse us. Hopin is a new innovation for ourselves. Let's try this now. There we go. Is that coming up for everyone?
That's great. Thanks, Connor. Yeah, so as I said earlier, EVES is a provider of measurement and verification services, particularly for energy performance contracts. And I should perhaps just start by saying that it's not always strictly smart metering that we're able to get for some of these projects until perhaps a bit more recently. But there has been a really notable increase in data coming from automatic meter reads, particularly for the smaller non-domestic buildings, and also very much so for gas data. That if you sort of go back 5, 10, 15 years wasn't really there. But I think that the lessons from using this data are very much applicable for what we could get out of smart meter data. So yeah, if we go on to the next slide, I can just set out a bit about the context of sort of energy performance contracting in the UK. And I suppose just by energy performance contract, I mean any sort of project that's got some aspects of guaranteed performance, however that might be structured from a technical or commercial point of view, and just sort of looking at the reasons why organisations are interested in performance contracting, and this is not by any means a sort of comprehensive list, but I guess some of the key things we find is that people want to outsource, or organisations want to outsource technical risk, but also the risk of the guarantee and the performance itself. So the supplier takes on basically the risk of getting the project right and making sure that it's delivered effectively. It also sort of opens up access to more finance, which in turn kind of increases the viability and scope of some of these projects. So kind of enables the end user to procure a more holistic solution, do something that's a bit further reaching rather than kind of procuring technologies piece by piece, starting with those with the lowest paybacks. So yeah, it does mean that we can have some more ambitious and ultimately sort of more capable of saving energy and I guess other sort of carbon metrics. And then I guess the other thing for the UK is that there are several public sector frameworks already available that are quite well established now, and that means that it's more easy for local authorities and other public sector bodies to access these projects and procure them more easily. And then thinking about what makes for a good performance contract, again, not a comprehensive list, but I guess starting with suitable buildings, and a really important part of that is the quality of the data, particularly in terms of assessing the opportunity in the first place. It's very difficult to do that without good data. We want the savings to be achieved, which should sound fairly obvious, but we also want that success to be communicated clearly and transparently, i.e. measured and verified. And again, we can't really understand the savings without access to reliable energy data. So again, that's sort of very much a common theme within this. If we go on to the next slide and just have a quick, I guess, look at measurement and verification and the sort of the best practice standards around that. The International Performance Measurement and Verification Protocol is our sort of reference document for measuring energy and water saving technologies. It sort of sets out good practice principles and methodologies, and I'm sure it might well be sort of familiar to people listening to this session. But I guess, yeah, the key thing to point out is that the difficulty around measuring an energy saving is that, of course, you can't do it directly. You can measure what you did use, and you need to compare that to what you would have used. And there kind of in lies the challenge, really. What you would have used had you not done the scheme could be quite complicated to work out. And that's why there is value in having an input from qualified professionals. And by the same token, third parties where there's I guess, a particularly large value at risk, which is, I guess, the role that we fulfill. And then on the next slide, just looking at the process, and particularly, I guess, where data comes in. So good practice process, as described by IPMVP, can be sort of thought of in two stages: the baseline period and the reporting period. And very crucially, the baseline period happening before you've actually implemented anything. And that I can't really emphasize enough how crucial that is to plan in advance of implementing measures, when it comes to being able to reliably measure them afterwards. So in this slide, we've got our baseline period where IPMVP will define a number of activities, and very much amongst them is the assessment of what data is required, what calculations need to be applied to that data, an assessment of its accuracy, etc. And making sure that having it and collecting it properly is then set out for the duration of the project. And then the second stage, the reporting period, that will happen at a defined point after implementation, and generally a case of gathering the data that was specified in the baseline stage, at the first stage, and then applying whatever calculations we specified, which perhaps maybe sounds like it's trivial, but we often find that projects may fall down to a lack of data availability, basically a lack of evidence, rather than necessarily a technical failure. And then just on the last slide from me is an example. Hopefully the next slide, if we can get that one up. That's great, thanks. Is an example from a sort of a typical chart, really, from an energy performance contract that's using a whole facility building approach. This sort of happens to be one building from a scheme with lots of different buildings in it. And the main intervention that we were looking at here is actually good energy management practices. So what are shown as optimizations on this chart are actually the results of site surveys identifying areas where basically tweaking things like hours of operation or temperature set points and that sort of thing, rather than sort of capital works. But so this is kind of showing what the process looks like with some real world data. We've got our baseline period prior to the project. That's our sort of red data. And then the approach taken is to build a mathematical model that responds dynamically to our sort of known changes, such as occupancy and weather. That's our blue line over the top. And so then you can see that by extending that model by over the reporting period, after we've done some optimizations, you see this gap opening up between the model and actual consumption, so that giving us our reported savings. And I suppose, yeah, so just to kind of a final note, really, to reiterate the value of good data at every point of these projects. So being the first thing to review when it comes to setting up a scheme, determining the savings in the first place, identifying the opportunities, making sure that we've got the possibility to build an accurate enough baseline, which then becomes absolutely essential in demonstrating performance. And I suppose also over time, developing an understanding of the buildings, providing insight that you kind of need for the sort of transformative impacts that we're looking for. And as I said at the start, the growing use of AMR data and, by analogy, smart data has allowed this type of more impactful scheme to be applicable to a much wider range of buildings, and hopefully even more so as time goes on. Thanks very much.
No, thank you, Hilary. And can I just say that is a beautiful chart, something that I always appreciate. And it's not always easy when you're looking at smart meter data or any data, getting rid of those spikes and making it look good at the end. Fantastic. Well, great to learn more from the UK and from a different part of the market in particular. We'll move on shortly to hear about Bulgaria and some of the work that's been taking place there. But I just thought I'd remind you that after this, we're going to move on to some guided activities. And also, if you think of any questions throughout the session, feel free to pop them in the chat or to use the Q&A function. I've been keeping an eye on that, so apologies for missing any of the next slides. But yeah, always open to hear more, and feel free to gather those questions. We'll be following up to review those either at the end of the session or as part of a dedicated follow-up question session. So those questions are really, really valued throughout. But I won't take up any more time because we have another speaker to hear from, and Stanislav is going to tell us a little bit about smart metering in Bulgaria. If you're ready. Fantastic. Oh, we can't hear you just yet, Stanislav.
Sorry, yeah.
No worries, thank you.
Thank you, Connor. So not much to say about smart metering in Bulgaria because actually it almost don't have smart metering, and it's also regulated by the current electricity measuring rule that is saying that smart metering or hourly data for electricity should be provided only for big consumers, and that excludes almost all municipal property and the households. So it's an issue. But after all, if you're on the free market and currently as nobody wants to contract with some fixed long-term prices, you need some, let's say, watt profile in order to calculate the price of the electricity. And at this stage, electricity providers are using standardized load profiles, which leads to what? No matter how you manage your energy or your building, you always pay the same price based on some standardized profiles. So next slide, please. After all, this is what we should start from. What are the expected benefits in order to see is there a sense to make smart metering reality in Bulgaria? First of all, without data, it's hard to make influence some behavior change. If your electricity costs do not depend on actual consumption, then you do not face the need to manage your consumption during, let's say, the day, trying to use cheap energy at noon and reduce the high consumption at the peak hours, which can significantly improve the management of our power system, because currently these high peaks between the noon consumption and the afternoon consumption at 7 are mostly covered by conventional fuels, and these peaks will be even higher with the mass penetration of the PV installations in Bulgaria. So there should be some motivation for users to try to adapt their consumption to in order to facilitate the management of the system. And after all, if we are we're still like a lot behind, still keeping our households on regulated prices, but sooner or later they should also go to the liberalized market, and then they will need this mechanism, this smart metering, in order to be able to control and manage their consumption. Next slide, please. What we currently need is a plan. What is written in our strategic documents, that we will fully liberalize the market in 25 or 26, but for this we for sure need smart metering, and nobody is talking about smart metering in Bulgaria. There are numerous measures that can be taken now, but we really need a plan, and in Bulgarian strategic documents this is something that is missing. We spent billions of levs for deep renovation, let's say, of multifamily residential buildings. If we put smart metering as an obligatory measure there, it will be just a small part of the investment, but it can influence and future measures when we see what are actually the benefits. And the benefits can be, of course, presented through communication. Unless we don't start speaking and talking about smart metering, why it's needed, what will be the benefits, it will, I don't believe, happen in Bulgaria. So thank you very much, and I think that is our goal here in Enright, to see how this data from smart metering can benefit the management of our buildings and the improvement of energy efficiency. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Stanislav. It looks like a lot of the issues that the UK faces aren't unique to the UK, and I totally agree. The need for a plan forward to unlock all that additional value is essential. It was fascinating to hear about the different definitions of smart metering data, and whether that's from 15-minute granularity up to an hour, it seems in the case of Bulgaria. And I'd love to hear in the chat what the different definitions you have or your nation has of smart meter data and the different use cases that feeds into. But talking about the need for a plan, our next presentation is from Spain, where the situation seems to be a lot better than in the UK. And so I'm fascinated to hear a little bit more from yourself, Oriol, about smart metering in Spain.
Yep. Next slide, please. Yep. As Conor was saying, we have a quite different situation. Currently in Spain, the smart meter rollout has been almost completed. Last year that we have data is 2019, and as you can see, large and small consumers were almost all of them equipped with a smart meter. As Conor said, in our case, a smart metering means hourly meter energy. So we take the data each hour. Comparing to what Stanislav was explaining, currently the smart meters allow companies to tell each user what has consumed each hour of the day. Depending on the contract that you have, you will be billed differently each hour of each day, promoting shifting consumption from the highest cost hours to the lowest cost. And as Stanislav was saying, with a high penetration of renewable energies, there will probably be hours that are quite cheap compared to others due to the high PV production that leaves the energy cost quite low. Maybe not in the current energy crisis, but it's expected to leave it quite low in more normal, hopeful times. So next slide, please. What we're talking here is the smart meter rollout was completed. Then we had each energy distributor company, you can see all of them in the screen, provided the users with their information. You had to log in on their websites and you could access your information. However, later on, they created this database platform that you see in the top of the screen. This platform basically aggregates all the data of all the energy distributors in one site. It's a centralized system. Anyone can access its consumption in this place. What it means is that if you have buildings in more than one region of Spain, you don't need to access several platforms, making it easier to access all the information and take action based on that. So if we go to the next slide, what that means is instead of depending on all the platforms, you go to a system that allows the later sharing of the information. As Connor said, sharing the information can be a hassle. It can be a roadblock that blocks the implementation of measures, basically because there is no analysis. In this case, database enables an easy sharing. I'm saying easy because it could be better, and there has been proposals to improve it, but none has passed yet. At the moment, you have to fill up a form and request information of another user to access. It's a simple form, not like Connor explained. It's just one form on the website, and if the owner of the information agrees, they will give you access to the information for 2 years. As I said, this needs to be improved to facilitate the analysis, the measurement verification that Hilary explained. If you get kicked out after 2 years, it may make the life of an ESCO or a contract harder. But it's way better than what we were talking in the UK. And all of this is regulated by the sharing of information Spanish law. Next slide. What database provides is visualization like this. You get hourly data of each day of the week. As you can see, the data for this case is from 2 days ago. You get the data quite early. You can get access to your data the day after the consumption has happened, which allows to work on behavioral change and detect mismanagement of the equipment. If we had a mismanagement of the facility, we could detect it the day after. Oh, and yep, final next slide. And what we've been discussing about the users and the benefits of having data. What we can see here is, as I said, we can change the behavior of the users of the building because we know what's happening, but we can also start implementing artificial intelligence-based analysis of this data, because now we're talking about lots of buildings, not just one domestic building. If we go to the next slide, if we're talking about thousands of buildings like we have in the Catalan government, we need something that can analyze all of them at once. There will be time consumption, but we cannot have one person checking every day all the buildings to see if there has been a mismanagement. That's why we took part in Enright to develop these tools that can use just the smart meter data to detect misuses of the building equipment or misuses of the energy. And one thing that's good from the database system that I didn't explain, it has a low barrier of entry. Any new user that wants to start using their system and logs into database will have stored up data for at least 2 years of their building. So if you start using a platform such as Enright that requires some of your data to perform the baseline that Hilary was explaining, you would need at least 1 or 2 years of data. Luckily, in this case, database is helping us. Just logging it, if your building existed 2 years ago, you will have all the data ready for you to start using it. And I would close up here. Thank you very much, and I hope that you enjoyed. If you have any questions, let us know. And about the Spanish case, just ping me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Aurel. I've got to say, I'm very jealous of the data disk system. And again, another good chart. So there's two reasons to be envious from the UK. Well, my responsibility for hitting next slides and attempting not to minimize a presentation will soon be over, and I'm very much looking forward to that because we'll soon be moving on to we'll now be moving on to some activities which we'll be delivering through the Miro system, and we have our partner here from Enright, Thule, who will help us from Smart Innovation Norway, who will help us to explain that now and run through the sessions. You can access the page through the link that we'll post in the chat now-ish. But if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to post them in the chat or post a question in the Q&A section and we can hop on the mic to help answer that. Fantastic. Lovely.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So as Connor said, I will soon post the link in the chat, but I will first share my screen to show how we use Miro today and also to introduce it to those of you who might not have used it before. So I will just share my screen. So this is what the board today looks like. And basically you can zoom in and out either using your mouse or your touchpad or these minus and plus symbols here in the right lower corner. And you can move around the board with right-clicking and then dragging, or you can choose this select tool here and then left-click and move around. And we'll start here with this welcome board. So you can write in the notes by double-clicking. And then you can move the post-it note to this board here. And if you need any more help with Miro, we have this little help guide here. And we also have this questions and answers board here where you can post your questions, maybe mostly content-related questions. And if you have any issues with Miro, then you can write in the chat, which you find here, or in the hop-in chat, and we will help you. So I will now share the link in the chat, and you can all access the board. So just open it in another tab, and yeah, don't close this tab, of course, so you will continue to hear me.
You'll miss out on all the great content.
Yes.
Fantastic. We'd love to learn more about who's attending today, so please feel free to fill out the name, specialism, nation, post-it notes with your own details.
Yes, I'll put the timer on, so if there's anyone who hasn't used it before, you'll have some time to get used to it, and just ask if you have any questions.
Just a bit where everyone chooses their favorite color. Or company branding. I can see lots of hands moving around, which is always a good sign. And no questions in the chat, or which is even better. Do keep them coming if you have any issues.
Yes, and I think I forgot to mention that the nation here in the in the sticky notes should be the nation that you're most familiar working with. Or if there's more than one, then yeah, you can write more.
Fantastic. Wonderful. You can see lots of participants moving over. It's always a good sign. If you do need
Yes, and
to...
I'll give a couple more minutes time for everyone to get used to Miro.
So I'm fascinated to see if we've got any participants from beyond the EU as well, and what your different perspectives would be on some of the case studies we discussed today. We're very much focused on Europe, with this being a slightly more European-focused conference, but also with us representing a European research project. But there must be fascinating work going on far and wide around the world, and the importance of smart meter data is very much being recognised. And I think those learnings that are outside of our normal European perspective are even more valuable than those that come within the silos that we work. So I'm fascinated to see what kind of representation we have from across the globe, and to hear some of your barriers and recommendations coming up in a moment.
Looks like we're 10 people on the board, so I think there might still be a couple who haven't written their name. So let's just wait a little more while.
Yes, we can see you in the on the list on the side. So we know how many you are, if not exactly who you are within Miro. We don't want to miss out on any valuable insight if we can avoid it. Ooh, that was a good noise.
Yeah, okay, it looks like we're about to be all done here. So good to see who all are here today. And now we're all Miro experts, so we can move on to the exercises. Of course, if you still have questions, then yeah, please let us know. So I will just bring everyone to the first exercise here. So I will move you here on the board. And the purpose today is to share our learnings and to also help each other to find common solutions. So during all activities, you will be able to also comment on each other's inputs. So just feel free to do so. So this activity is about mapping the most common barriers to advancing smart meter policy. So you can just fill in a barrier you have faced or you're aware of, either in your country or otherwise in Europe. And if it's related to a specific nation, then just mention the country also in the sticky note. So they are divided to highest priority, medium priority, and lowest priority. So you can just start filling these sticky notes, and also suggest any solutions you might think of, either to your own or to someone else's barrier. And please keep it short, but preferably longer than just one word, so we have something to work with. And also, please only write one barrier per sticky note. So we can start the exercise, and I will turn on the timer again, so you can have some time to think on your own.
During this soothing piano, I just thought I'd flag that although we focused a lot on electricity smart metering, gas smart metering is increasingly important.
Okay, looks like we're done writing. Looks like people are done writing the barriers. So as Connor said, you can also suggest solutions to each other's barriers or even to your own. So I'll give a couple more minutes time to do that. So you can choose the green sticky notes on the left side and just drag them next to the barrier that you're referring to. And it can also be a comment, it doesn't have to be a solution. So I'll just give you some time to read each other's what you have written and see if you come up with any comments or solutions.
So I spotted one of the barriers under lowest priorities, public information campaigns for individuals. Be curious to see what different messages people think are most important for using those, for producing those campaigns, and whether those will differ in different contexts, different parts of the market or different parts of the EU. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on this or any of the other barriers.
I added a bit more time in case someone still wants to go through this. And just so you know, unfortunately, due to the technical limitations of the platform, we're not able to discuss out loud with each other. So we can only work through this Miro board and chat. But we will have a follow-up webinar where we will then be able to discuss more in depth the outputs that we come up with today.
There's a very interesting barrier in the medium priority, and we mentioned gas smart metering, but of course for nations with district heating, and the heat is also, I'd be curious to see your opinions on what the role of heat smart meters is moving forward, and if that's a sector that's well developed in the nations you're familiar with.
Yes. Yeah, I think it looks like everyone has is almost done writing. Charles is still maybe writing some comments and solutions. The board will also stay here, so you can go back to it afterwards. I think it's better that we move on to the next activity at this point, and then we go through this in more depth in the follow-up webinar. So the next activity is a dream use case. So now we've learned a little bit about the barriers you all face, and now we would like to explore what the dream use case for smart meter data would be. So where the data and methods can add value to your work. And this could be, for example, as a service business model or new approaches to shifting consumption to reduce emissions. So I will again bring everyone here. So here is the blue board where you see the dream use cases, and then on the right side there's the green board where you can write requirements or recommendations to realize these innovations, or also some more general recommendations. And again, you can move these recommendations to the dream use case, or if they are more general, then you can also leave them on the board on the right side. And again, feel free to propose requirements or variations to each other's use cases as well. And I will put the timer on again and give you, let's say 7 minutes. I think this might take a bit more time. in smart meter data, and also if you would like to hear more about the Enright database, and yeah, join our mailing list as well. So you'll find this form linked in the hop-in chat if you're done with.
Around your requirements and put them next to the use case in question.
Yes, and comment on each other's use cases as well if you wish. Connor, have you had a chance to see what people have written? Do you have any comments on those?
I do indeed. Some really great insight here. For selfish reasons, I thought I'd highlight the dream use case for public authorities, which is to have a platform that provides data to the energy management team in real time. I think that's an incredibly valuable thing, the kind of thing that would be even better, particularly through a system such as Enright. So I thought I'd highlight that. But no, some really interesting aspects here, focusing around what data can be combined with smart meters around indoor environment quality, but also the incentives that can feed into that. And I think there's lots of with smart meter data such as this. I'm particularly interested in some of the requirements and recommendations. So we've got 15 minutes left until we're kicked out of the meeting room, but the Miro will stay open. I'd be fascinated to see what people's different requirements and recommendations would be. And feel free to you can put them in a different color.
Sorry, Connor, I think losing you.
I think Connor dropped out entirely.
Sorry?
I think Connor dropped out entirely.
Okay. Let's wait a little while if he can come back. But yeah, thank you everyone for your inputs, and it's great to see so many suggestions and use cases. Yeah, as I said, there's the form here. I will bring you to this board. You can click here to fill out the form. We would really like to hear more about you and your interest in smart meter data. So perhaps while we wait for Connor to hopefully come back to the room, you can take a little while to fill in the form.
And we will be having a follow-up for this session soon, right, Tuli?
Yes, in early October. And yeah, if you give us permission, then we will send you an email about the follow-up session where we will go through this these outputs in more in depth and also answer the questions and sort of summarize the learnings from today.
Good. As you can see, Connor is speaking through the mirror.
Okay.
He just wrote a note for all of us.
Yeah, okay. So he has been kicked out. Yeah, well, I think this was the activities were great, and yeah, thank you all again for your inputs. Thank you, Michael, Amin, Charles, Dana, Stoyan, Monica, Connor, Oriol, and Stanislav for your attendance and inputs today. Yeah, so please subscribe to our newsletter if you'd like to hear more about Enright platform and what's to come, and also about the follow-up webinar in October. So thank you all from my side, and have a good day.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.